Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London. That would be your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, well, strap yourselves in for a little bit of pop culture talk, movies, video games, comic books, TV, all of the pop culture conversation you can fit under the hood of that cranium of yours. That is what we do here at Geekscape. I've got my good friend Ian Kerner joining me because we're going to be talking all about Marvel's new Echo series that premiered a little bit, I think middle of last week on Disney Plus, and they put the whole thing up, all 5 episodes in one fell swoop. Some people binged it. I watched it over the course of 2-3 days, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, which is a good conversation considering we just had Garrett on to talk about the daily release schedule that they did for What If Season 2, which was another interesting sort of streaming experiment. Talk to my friends in the streaming space, and we all talk about this idea of contraction. There was so much content coming out on streaming, and people were into so much of this stuff, and there was a race to have big names and big projects and be the streamer that has a bunch of stuff. And then when we first started seeing the cancellations and things starting to come out from places like Netflix, or maybe it was happening over Warner Brothers on the Max line and this and that, you start thinking about the idea of contraction, and people are still kind of finding what's the best model that works for them or their audience. And these audiences are so stratified, the demographics are so different, so a lot of younger people maybe do watch the Disney Plus, while older people maybe go for a different streamer or a more established streamer that has a longer running. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Like, it is all an experiment, and this Disney Echo series came out all at once, and we'll see how it works. I don't think it will be the end of Marvel's experimentation with how they release their streaming, but it's interesting, at least to me. If you're interested in it, great. If you're not that interested in it, well, I've got like 18 years of podcasts you can go listen to. Last week's was great. Mickey Rapkin, shortlisted for an Oscar. That is awesome. And my producer, Mickey's producer, Noam, who's recently been on the podcast feed because he was on the screenwriting episode from LA Comic-Con when we did that panel. He went to a party. Maybe it's Noam's story to tell, but it was pretty exclusive. Like, Leonardo DiCaprio and these other Oscar hopefuls are putting together parties for getting votes, and Noam goes over there he goes to this freaking party for Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone, his co-star in Killers of the Flower Moon, and he's at this house. I'm not gonna tell you whose house it is, but Noam looks over and he's like, "Who's that guy in the corner?" It was Mel Gibson, and they get in a little conversation, and Noam says, "I got this movie. It's shortlisted for an Oscar." And Mel's like, "Oh, what's it called?" And Noam says, "The Anne Frank Gift Shop." I'm not going to tell you any more of that story. Follow Geekscape on socials, and of course, subscribe to the Geekscape podcast. Maybe Noam will be on soon to tell the rest of that story. But yeah, well, you guys know about Mel, and you guys know about my producer Noam, and from last week, you guys know about the Anne Frank Gift Shop, Mickey's Oscar shortlisted project. I also talked to my friend Chris Black about coming on Monarch, which is like one of my favorite streaming shows. That's over there on Apple TV. It's the Godzilla show, or at least a tie-in to the Godzilla King Kong legendary stuff. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, that wrapped up. I loved the finale. I loved a lot of that series, and I immediately reached out to Chris, who's been on the show, and was like, "Hey Chris, we got to talk about the Monarch. I loved it." And he said Apple gave him the A-OK. So I don't know when. Everybody's busy, but we'll figure out how to get Chris back on the show to talk all about some Godzilla and Monarch Legacy of the Monsters. Because if you haven't seen it, yeah, it's a monster show, but don't count the acting and the writing out because it's a monster show. There's some stuff in there, especially that finale. There's a Kurt Russell scene that I was just like, oh, yeah, that seems really, really awesome. And the Facebook users already up on Facebook chatting with me. This is, what do you think about the season finale of Monarch? Well, regardless of what I think, right? Because it's just my opinion. I did love the show. I think it was a combination of fun, the fun monster stuff and the human stories in the time jumping. It all started working on me. But there is that scene with Kurt Russell. you know the scene. There's a scene with Kurt Russell in the finale that I think one of the publications like TV Insider or something talked about it, and it's just a really well acted scene. It's a beautiful scene, complicated little scene, and I thought it was great. And so you can say, oh yeah, we can do we can do monster TV all we want, but I think it elevated the series a lot. And Chris wrote that episode, so I definitely want to talk to him about that. And Facebook user, I don't know why it only says Facebook user, but it says, yeah, that one scene with Kurt Russell was legit. We've loved him since Big Trouble Little China and all that. So we're here to talk about Echo, a series that, hey, who knows what you thought about it going in, but you got all 5 episodes at once, so you should be knowing about it now. This is the last chance I'll be telling you that there will be spoilers, and I can't wait to talk about it. So let's kick the theme song. Let's come back with Ian Kerner, and let's talk some Marvel's Echo. All right, Geekscapists, you're here to hear us talk about Echo, the brand new Marvel series on Disney Plus. They dumped all 5 episodes. You should be caught up by now if you're listening to this. There are only 5 episodes, but this is your final spoiler warning for our conversation with my good friend who I'm bringing in right now. Maybe he's doing a little bit of research. I think I see him doing a little bit of research, but I'll bring him anyway. Ian, how much research do you actually have to do, considering you are the encyclopedic, like, you are the all mind. What is it? What do the Kree have? The supreme intelligence of of comic books.
I mean, look, I just sometimes like to review some stuff of, and make sure I'm remembering stuff right. And actually, what I was just looking at is something I thought really interesting for the sake of this. Apparently, they've updated the official MCU timeline to now include the Netflix shows.
Yes. Well, we all knew that they added the Netflix shows.
No, we knew they added them, but apparently they're now actually listed as part of the MCU timeline.
Fantastic.
Did
we ever have any doubts, Ian?
We did, because we weren't really sure. Look, when we saw Charlie Cox playing Daredevil again in She-Hulk, there's always
in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, but there's always been this possibility that he's an alternate from that. The Netflix one could still have been a different universe, and just still Charlie Cox is Daredevil, but everything that happened wasn't necessarily canon for what they're calling 616.
Yeah. I think that they've avoided getting. I mean, it might get messy. Sure, it might get messy, but considering
the current rumors are that Foggy and Karen are back, at which point, yeah, the Netflix shows happen. There's no reason for them not to have.
Especially since in that first Daredevil, you're coming off of a major event like the Battle of New York. Mm-hmm. You have ties. Don't check right now, but where's the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on that MCU timeline? Because has it always been there? Because obviously we had Nick Fury in that first season.
Well, by the way, and if you go, there was a lot of crossover. While it was always supposed to be official, but then they had the issues with Perlmutter and Feige, right? But for instance, things like the helicarrier coming to the rescue at the end of Age of Ultron, it's actually set up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because you don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
It's set up over the course of several episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. before. There's a bunch of stuff that made Agents until the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. But I mean, up until then, you're still talking about, you're still having the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. go through the quantum realm.
I was at the same orphanage as Matt Murdock. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was in there that was set up.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean.
Well, Marvel took this Echo show and turned it into a Marvel Spotlight series. We haven't seen a Marvel Spotlight series before, have we? What did you think about that when you first saw that black and white Marvel Spotlight?
Honestly, the idea of that, it's a weird thing, right? Because Marvel Spotlight, even as a comic, was never out of continuity. They're just trying to say, hey, you can go ahead and watch this, and you don't have to watch anything before, and it doesn't necessarily affect anything else. So I think the idea is that you're not a slave to continuity. And I will say that the first episode does a really good job of completely telling you her story without, you didn't see Hawkeye, doesn't matter. They tell you everything that you missed in Hawkeye, you see it.
And I loved that first episode because you get a taste of Hawkeye. You get some scenes from Hawkeye. You get everything from the Hawkeye show. And I love your shirt right now. He's wearing the Matt Fraction Hawkeye shirt. You get the Hawkeye element, but then, oh my God, how much did you love Daredevil popping in? And he's got the whip, you know, weapon and everything. The Billy Club is zipping around.
Red. Yeah.
That was awesome. And you know what? A part of me, after I saw Daredevil, it got me so hyped that I was like, I can't wait to see the next 4 episodes, because there will be all these other Marvel characters kind of helping to, you know, buoy a lesser known character like Echo, and not just lesser known to MCU fans, but she's only been around on the page for less than 20 years. And I'm kind of glad that I did not get that. I'm kind of glad I didn't get a revolving door of Marvel cameos. And at first I was concerned, because when she leaves New York in that end of the first episode, and you find out that most of the series is going to take place in rural Oklahoma, I started going, wait, do I want to see this major New York based character who works for the Kingpin to start out with, and then joins the Avengers? Do I want to see her in rural Oklahoma? Is that the show I want to see? And the show did a pretty good job of telling me, hey man, like, chill. We got some cool stuff coming your way.
I was conflicted. You know, I loved the first 2 episodes, and I really liked the third one. And it wasn't until after that I really, you know, I mean, basically from what we've heard, the show was cut down a lot. It was originally several more episodes. And that becomes really clear to me in 4 and 5. Like,
how so?
Because it feels really rushed. I mean, fine, they do this whole redemption story, and she comes to grips with these new powers. But it feels like it becomes like a very different show. I was really enjoying, honestly, everything, you know, in the hometown, with the family, great characters. I agree with you. I didn't need it to be a whole bunch of, you know, other, you know, Marvel characters coming and all that. This was an interesting story, but it just, I mean, tonally, I think it shifts hugely.
When Wilson Fisk pops back up?
Well, no, I mean, when like episodes 4 and 5, and listen, they kind of do somersaults to just make the 2 different plot lines work together, don't you think?
Okay.
In the end,
well,
there was some stuff. Make sense that they're going to blow the whole fair up and all that stuff. Like I was
no, like, really? that felt like Wilson Fisk just like retribution for being turned down, because he gives Maya the choice of coming back to New York and being one of his enforcers, coming back to be we're gonna be family, but you know that family is just gonna be like, hey, you're gonna be my enforcer now. And that felt like Wilson Fisk like hurting her, and so that made sense to me. I was just kind of invested in seeing the cast of characters at that point, and would I like to see them again? I don't know. I mean, like Maya in this series is different than the Maya on the comics page.
Very different.
And I thought we were in for a bit of license when that first scene showed up, and you start with the indigenous. What would you call it? A spirit? Would you call it like the origin of her people? Yes, and the Choctaw, and then you start to see like in every episode up until those last 2.
They weren't even human, and they became human, and you know, and obviously there's other things in the MCU we've seen, these extra dimensional beings, whatever they are, you know, and
they almost look like Skrulls with the
chin. Yeah, I was thinking that too.
And I was buying all of it because it's Marvel, and it's like, okay, like if you guys want to change this stuff, go for it. But in the comics, when Echo is introduced, she's simply an enforcer or an assassin enforcer for the Kingpin, and she kind of has like a Taskmaster type of ability to mimic your movements and echo them. So if she fights Daredevil, she can fight Daredevil to a standstill, because before you know it, she's fighting at Daredevil's ability.
She had studied Daredevil and Bullseye fights,
right?
So that's what made her able to initially fight Daredevil.
And so anybody she studies, she can echo their movements. And I think I understand, once you've introduced Taskmaster, especially a gender flipped Taskmaster, like in Black Widow, that you don't want to have 2 characters, female characters, that both mimic their opponents.
By the way, even having done that, the idea that they put this female in this outfit that made him look male, Taskmaster, was just cribbing what they did with Ronan with Echo in the comics, which is to say, the original idea at one point, you had the initial Echo origin story is pretty close to the comics, what we got in Hawkeye.
Yeah.
It diverges a little bit. But in the comics, for a while, when they introduced that character Ronan, that you see, Hawkeye has the outfit and everything, both in Endgame and in the Hawkeye miniseries. Originally, they didn't, in the comics, you didn't know who Ronan was. And it was actually supposed to be Matt Murdock. But then they decided that people expected that, so they flipped it. So it turned out it was Echo. So, and then later, the second Ronin was Clint Barton.
What they did here, though, from the get-go, with having this super dimensional or alien or cosmic power given to her, and you see it glow in her hands, you see it glow in her mother, they really want to let you know, like, there are supernatural or super-powered elements at play here. We had talked before the show that now in the comics, folks, the Phoenix Force has chosen Echo to be the Phoenix Force. At least
last year.
Oh, well, what's funny is there's a lot of Jason Aaron here. And I'm not just talking about like Scalped, right? Like it feel like I love Jason Aaron's Scalped, the book that he did that was put out by Image. And Jason Aaron had a
Wasn't Vertigo?
Oh, it was Vertigo for DC. My bad. And he put out this huge Avengers Forever story, and a lot of it, and he gave Echo the Phoenix Force. He also had generational Avengers. He had like Avengers BC and like all these different kind of Avengers. And Echo was always part of like a core Avengers team. Well, the Phoenix Force was. And so the Phoenix Force, not only being, oh, guys, Geekscape, do I want to do this? I just went down this road and it's so complicated. But the Phoenix is then revealed to be Thor's mother in some sense. And then you find out the Phoenix Force is inhabited Echo, and she's the current Phoenix until the end of that storyline.
Well, when it moves on, some of the Infinity comics, they said that she had an ancestor that was Phoenix Force before that, and there's some time travel stuff and all that. So I actually think what they really did with this series and this idea of this being a generational thing, they borrowed from that storyline, and they weren't going to do the Phoenix Force in Echo because the Phoenix Force is so strongly tied to X-Men, and having done it not that long ago in the Fox movies, but B, maybe they'll revisit, maybe they won't. So I actually think it was really cool that they just made it so much more tied into Native American lore.
Yeah, agreed.
But that's what that was. The idea of Echo going from this street level fighter to this more cosmically powered one was exactly that.
And at first I thought it was a pretty aggressive move, and I was like, whoa, you get away from what Echo is. That being said, it keeps her from being Taskmaster. And Taskmaster is great. I guess we're going to get Taskmaster again in Thunderbolts, which I love this version of Taskmaster. Taskmaster is one of my favorite villains. But we got this Echo now, and Echo has some supernatural powers. I think healing abilities, a bit of premonition. What would you say her powers are at this point? I mean, she does have some fighting abilities. They're not necessarily based on studying and mimicry, are they?
Well, we've never seen that in this character. This character just happened to be that more of that badass prodigy martial artist. Mm-hmm. We did not ever see any kind of, to borrow the Taskmaster term, the photographic reflexes, right?
Right.
So we didn't see it. So yeah, it seemed like a basic cosmic stuff. I actually thought it was really interesting sharing the abilities with the family.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
It's tied in with your bloodline. Like these are ancestral powers, which is super cool.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think we ever need Marvel to answer those questions, like tie them into an alien race or anything like that. I think that we're cool just accepting that this is their lane. They did that in
by the way,
2 weeks ago.
It's very similar to what they did with Ms. Marvel, right?
Yeah. Said, hey, this is part of your lineage.
The clandestine thing.
Yeah. So we get a few things towards the end of this. And Ian, I actually liked the last 2 episodes. I don't think that they necessarily felt rushed.
I disliked them. I just felt like the tone shifted dramatically, and
it became more of a crime series, or what?
Well, it became so much about that spirituality thing. I mean, I was really enjoying that, street level, the jumping on the train thing, and she's crazy and all that stuff was really cool. And then suddenly it's like, okay, well, never mind. Now we're going to just do this.
But if you don't satisfy the questions that she has about her mother, who you see her lose as a kid in the first episode, I don't think that we have a closure in this season. I think you definitely had to get back to the spiritual in order to satisfy the relationships that were set up in the first episode. With her.
They set it up from the get-go. So
the grandmother and the mother, that stuff had to be satisfied. Especially, and the spirituality stuff had to be satisfied too, because that was such a strong stylistic opening.
And I liked it. And obviously, I mean, there's no question that for the sake of representation and doing it the right way in terms of, telling this very Native American story, they did a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they said on the screen, they actually had, they actually consulted directly, which is great.
And I think they did that as well on that What If episode.
Yes.
I think it was Mohawk.
I love that.
It
was Mohawk in
it was Mohawk in What If, and here it's Choctaw. Am I getting this right?
Yeah.
I thought I enjoyed Echo more than I thought I would and I mainly was dubious because of what you said, that there were more episodes. They got cut down. It felt like there was some issues that, whenever I see that, whenever there's smoke and you're like, there might be fire, this stuff might not be that good. And then I ended up really, really, really enjoying all 5 episodes of this.
By the way, I don't usually do this, but after I watched the first one and we had Daredevil, I had to look. I was like, is he in any others? And they list Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock in 3 more in episodes 3, 4, and 5, which he's not in.
No, he got cut out, I guess. I'm sorry about that.
What?
That being said, we've been hearing a lot about the changes that they made to Daredevil Born Again. Like you listed, they created a brand new pilot. I think that maybe brings Karen and Foggy back, which I had to text you and be like, dude, I heard Karen and Foggy are back. I'm so excited.
To be clear, more than back, apparently the original take was he's raging because they're killed off screen.
No, thanks. No, I don't think that would have flown with fans at all.
No.
Yeah, fans would not have been down with that.
A, have them in it, and B, and hopefully don't kill them.
Please do not kill them.
Yeah.
Karen, I mean, if we're doing Born Again, if we're doing, maybe if we're leading into a new Bullseye, or a Return of the Bullseye and reforming him into the Bullseye.
Well, listen, if that's what you're going to do, she has to do porn first.
No.
Geekscape is porn the original. Drugs, that's the deal.
The original Daredevil Born Again, Frank Miller's, was that Karen was down on her luck. She'd done porn. She needed a hit of drugs, and she sold Matt Murdock's identity, and it eventually landed in the hands of the Kingpin, and the Kingpin took his life apart. That is an awesome comic book run.
Now, mind
you, do not want to see that happen.
What I was really fascinated about that story, though, is Kingpin realizes that knowledge is power, and if too many people have that knowledge, it isn't his power anymore. And he kills every single other person that the whole chain. He makes sure he kills all of them.
If you know Matt Murdock is Daredevil, I'm going to kill you. I have to have this power.
It's only him.
What did you think of Wilson Fisk in this season?
D'Onofrio is phenomenal in that role. It's like
we got to see his eye heal. We got to see him with that mechanical thing that healed his eye.
Yeah. Fine, but awesome.
It set him up pretty good for Born Again,
and that tag is a direct setup
to Wilson Fisk running for mayor, which he did successfully in the Marvel comics, and he outlined superheroes in New York. He set up a lot of things that are still in play, and
and comics does something interesting. Initially when they made him mayor, I think, this will just be a minute, and it didn't last only a minute, but what they did is, I mean, not to get overly political, but they were basically doing I think comic writers tend to be very liberal, and they were doing the bad guy in power thing.
Yeah. And he was a bit Trumpy Dumpty in this season too. Like he was saying some things that we'd actually heard Donald Trump say.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, like in Heidi turned to me and she goes, he's Donald Trump. Like he's a smart Donald Trump. And I was like, yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
He has rage problems. Yes,
that's right. That's what they're
he is
doing.
manipulative and he's mean. Like that is he
Mm-hmm.
he lashes out at people for
comic.
no reason. And I'm looking forward not only to the MCU Netflix stuff or the Netflix stuff joining the MCU, but to me, the logical conclusion to Wilson Fisk as mayor is my man Luke Cage as mayor.
I mean, which is why, honestly,
I'm being too wishful.
Well, that's just it. Remember how the last Luke Cage ended, where he was basically set up as a new Kingpin, and we never got any resolution to that. So I'd like to see that resolution.
Jim Pugnall says Trump wishes he had Fisk's money and his physique.
And he's right. Well, that's just it. Can you imagine if Donald Trump was actually a truly physically imposing, threatening person who actually could, with his bare hands, kill people?
There were some scenes in this where the Maya Lopez and Kingpin are one-on-one, and you think it's going to go to some form of a fight. And I just told Heidi, I said, if he gets her hands on her, the fight is over, because he is so strong. I mean, he technically has some level of super strength, right? Like Frank Miller has him like lifting the crazy amount of weights of this and that, and he's just
they do this crazy thing that he's just so massive, and he's big, but he's all muscle. Honestly, I loved the scene in the alley with the hot dog stand guy.
Yeah. That was a pretty awesome character moment where this hot dog vendor, or really ice cream vendor, had been rude to Maya as a child, and Kingpin witnesses it and says, "I'll be right back." And Maya walks in on him killing the person in the alley, and when you think that she's going to be horrified, she walks over and starts kicking the ice cream vendor. And I was like, that is the worst treatment of an ice cream vendor, short of Spawn, maybe issue number 5 or whatever it was. Like that when she comes over and just starts kicking him,
violator. It
was such a great, and shout out to former Geekscape guest Ken Christensen, who was on years ago and was part of this writing group. But I thought that it was just awesome that they did that with action instead of, like she witnessed, and then we realize he is a awful influence on her.
Well, I actually felt that more than the influence, because that's that moment where he sees something in her and he recognizes the rage and her desire to express it. That he thinks she's going to be horrified and she isn't. In fact, she's like, yeah, great, let's beat this guy.
Any chance that we're going to see her again soon?
I don't know.
I don't think honestly, Born Again too soon. Like, what do we got?
She won't be in that. I think that if you had asked me this a month ago, I would have said no way, this is a burn off. I think it's doing well though.
A lot of people have told me how much they enjoy the series, and these are not comic book people. These are people who just casually do the MCU thing, and they're
airing it on both Disney and Hulu, and it's doing well on both services. Like the ratings are high.
Great.
So maybe
at the end of the series, she's headed back to New York.
We're not sure what she's going to do.
Yeah, she just leaves town, right? Yeah. He's headed back to New York. He's running for mayor.
He's heading back to New York, but we're not sure what she's going to do. So we could see her, we could not see her. And that's what I think made it a Marvel spotlight. I think the idea was, you know what? You didn't have to see what came before. If you saw Hawkeye, great. They threw him in there. And we may never see her again. It's an interesting show. Here's the thing about the show, which is unfortunate. Like, there's no reason for a season 2, because everything interesting about the show with her in the town, there's nothing to go back to.
Right.
There isn't really a story there.
You'd have to introduce a new threat. I think somebody that would be interesting would be, Born Again related is, who's the super soldier that...
Nuke.
I think Nuke would have a fun role in this street level world of heroes, right? And they, in the most recent Uncanny Avengers, they didn't have Nuke, but they had the clone Steve Rogers that was created by the Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube.
Yeah, and
that was pretty interesting to have an evil Steve Rogers return.
Steve-O.
Yeah, they say Daredevil or
Deadpool.
Deadpool called him Steve-O. But having a character like that among like some of these characters, and maybe they're Thunderbolts adjacent. I think this stuff can really live on Disney Plus.
It's interesting to me though that like same thing with Shang-Chi, where the MCU, they've done this thing where they've taken the street level character and they made it more cosmic, right? And you know, it's definitely possible Echo pops up, you know, in the next big Avengers movie with Secret Wars and Kang and all that.
But none of the Netflix or these characters have actually, you know, it's on all their contracts, and they said back then it was on all their contracts when they were doing the Netflix stuff that they could,
the original Netflix stuff,
right? That they could appear in, they could get called up to the.
And you always expected it.
And we never got it. We never got Daredevil flipping through.
And Infinity War and Endgame, I expected to just see them on the street dealing with, you know, whatever Black Order stuff was happening. What we got with Spider-Man.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
But at that point in particular, the division was very clear.
Yeah.
Different now.
So
we can hope.
I don't know what else you want to say about Echo. We both really enjoyed it, it turned out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a ton more to say. You know, there isn't a ton of Easter eggs for us to talk about, I don't think, in that. It's good. It's solid. As I said,
I thought that was Fancy Dan. For an entire episode, I thought that one Australian guy was Fancy Dan, and I thought that they were going to have the Enforcers in there, which would have been pretty awesome.
That would have been cool. But again, they don't do a lot of that. And then maybe that's part of what makes it a Marvel spotlight, right?
Yeah, the Enforcers Geekscape are Spider-Man and Daredevil.
Was Werewolf by Night also Marvel spotlight?
That's the one I thought was got a Marvel spotlight intro, was Werewolf by Night. And that is a character, and of course Man-Thing, that I hope comes back.
I really hope they come
Elsa
back.
Bloodstone.
Yeah.
I would love that. We were all anticipating some form of a new entry this last Halloween. We thought we were going to get remember when we thought we were going to get a Mephisto movie or something? Yeah. And we got Werewolf by Night in color, which, you know what? We dig it. I love my Werewolf by Night, but let's, I don't know. It's tough because we talk in these episodes, Ian, about how maybe it's becoming unwieldy. There's too many characters, there's too many releases, people are getting superhero fatigue, comic book fatigue, all this stuff. But folks like you and me, like, we want to see these characters put in these cool, interesting places.
Listen, here's where it's tricky. You know, I've had this conversation since Endgame, where I'm like, okay, the Avengers you care the most about are gone. You know, I mean, this is one of the growing pains Marvel has. At the same time, I'm interested in these other stories. I'm interested in these, call them lower level, lower tier, you know, characters. I thought the idea of Disney Plus series was a nice way to get them, but unfortunately, they cost a lot of money. I remember years ago when the Netflix series were on, we loved Daredevil so much, and I remember saying to you, it was really weird. Like, we love Daredevil, but the idea that Spider-Man doesn't get to have that kind of character development because, you know, he gets a movie and Daredevil gets, you know, 3 seasons, you know, at 13 episodes each, you know, like, it's like, wait a second. It's odd that the bigger character actually gets less time, and yet they spend more money on it.
But it's also elevated. Wouldn't you say that the accessibility of Netflix and the fact that Netflix was in so many TV households at the time really helped that character? And what I'm really alluding to is when we talk about different tiers of popularity or different tiers of exposure for characters, Iron Man was B-list. Iron Man and Captain America and Thor in the Paramount characters were solidly B-list.
Well, here's the thing that's weird about those characters. They were B-list in terms of public awareness, popularity, but not in terms of, as a Marvel Comics reader, they were decidedly A-list.
But their books didn't sell.
Yes, but I'm just saying in terms of the pantheon of characters within Marvel, they were A-list. In terms of the numbers that their individual books were selling at, they were B-list.
The books that were selling
matters, right?
But Geekscape is the books that were selling were Spider-Man and X-Men,
right?
And when
Spider-Man and X-Men still sell all the time.
And when Feige went to whatever fund to try and get a movie line started on Captain America and on Thor,
David Mizell did it, but yes,
when they asked for the money to make Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, they said, what are the comic book sales? And the comic sales were not Spider-Man and X-Men, and they'd sold those off to Fox and Sony. And they couldn't make the Captain America, the Avengers, the Iron Man movies until they come along with Bendis and they make New Avengers. And who do they put In the Avengers book, they put Wolverine and they put Spider-Man on the Avengers. New Avengers with Cap and Iron Man and Thor goes to number 1. Buoyed, of course, and like floated by the popularity of Spider-Man and Wolverine. They walk right back into that door and they say, look at the Avengers now. And they get themselves a movie deal for 4 pictures or 5 pictures, whatever it was back at the Paramount stuff.
And the interesting thing about that was also sort of this idea of like, oh, who are your best, biggest characters? Because Marvel kind of wasn't doing that. They did Avengers was their corner. Spider-Man was his loner thing, you know. X-Men was their own corner. Even though, listen, they had graduated Beast into the X-Men. I mean, in decades the 80s, before.
70s. And I love currently in the X-Men books, one of the highlights of the X-Men books, and we've talked about how we feel about the X-Men books offline. There's been some great stuff. One of the highlights for me for the X-Men books has been how much Tony Stark Iron Man has been in it. Iron Man Tony Stark is straight up like a big part of the X-Men
and Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, but she's a mutant now.
Well, that's just it, and that actually came. That's an interesting development that came because of the movies and show, right? The MCU affected that.
It's been interesting to see that stuff go back to the page and the page come back.
What's fascinating about that is she would have been a mutant, and they made her an Inhuman at a time where they didn't want Fox to get new characters, so they made her an Inhuman. When the original idea for her, you know, I'd read an interview somewhere saying that she was meant to be a mutant. So now they're going back and they're like, well, she's going to be both. And it's interesting. They're taking their time of discovering her mutant abilities because they might affect her Inhuman abilities. It's obvious what they're going to be. They're going to be the ability she has in the MCU.
Yeah. So Ian, and we're all leaning towards X-Men now. Like this train is going.
And Fantastic Four.
By
the way,
go ahead.
Coming back to your point again, same thing. Like Fantastic Four was for a long time kind of considered B-list based on sales, but clearly as a comic reader, A-list.
Cornerstone of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
Marvel's first family.
Right.
Absolutely. And I love hearing a few more rumors coming out of that camp of the movie being made. I like the scheduling conflicts people like Pedro Pascal might be having at the moment. I'm anticipating all of it. I'm a big fan.
Is Vanessa Kirby confirmed yet, or still not?
I'm not even looking at any of that stuff, Ian, until you text it to me in our threads with the Justin Jordan and Christian Blatt. I'm keeping myself off the Twitters. I'm keeping myself off the stuff. There's I've been working on comics over here, Ian. I woke up early this morning. I know it's a holiday, but I woke up at like 5 and I was sending notes back to an artist in Chile on comic book stuff. That stuff is going to be coming to Geekscape later. But I've been working on so many fun stories and things over here. I've been a writing fiend at the moment. Awesome. So if news comes to me, it comes through. It probably comes through Ian Kerner, which is you're a resource man and you're a resource here, and I love it. Let's quickly just talk about what's coming next on Marvel. We're only getting one film this year. We're getting Deadpool in July.
Can't wait.
Marvel's not doing anything with that first weekend of May date anymore, which is it was just their date for a long time. When Thunderbolts left July, Deadpool slid to July. It was going to be that May date. What do we got coming up? We have Daredevil Born Again, but I don't think that's soon, is it? We also have
coming for a while.
We have Agatha Harkness.
Yes. Agatha Harkness is apparently done in the canon. They're holding it.
Okay.
So holding that back.
Anytime you guys want to release it, I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, I'll watch it. But yeah, then Daredevil, I mean, they're kind of shooting and figuring that out now. So
could be a fall.
It could be, but I haven't heard anything saying it's gonna be.
Okay. So we're actually gonna get a little thin on the Marvel stuff this year.
On that part.
I'm not the one that ruined it, Marvel. I showed up every single time. I watched your shows day one. I showed up. Why am I being punished? I'm kidding.
It's not fair.
It's not fair to people like Ian. You know what?
I watched Echo in one day.
Yeah, I watched it. We were watching it for dinner, and like the dinner thing. That first
I watched
episode
two before dinner, and then afterwards I watched the other 3.
And Ian, was I right or not about What If season 2?
I loved it.
It's fucking awesome.
So good.
It was awesome. And I have a friend who loved Echo. So maybe she has some maybe she's not into the animated thing, but I said, listen, Trust me.
Jonathan, for the viewers, I want to say Jonathan was literally saying to me, Ian, slow down. Don't watch all of What If, because in case Echo's not good, you might want to clean the palette. And I was like,
with What If?
It was already like, I was like, dude, I'm already. I was like, on the second to last episode, I was like, no.
Ian had a lot of stuff going on off
the week before,
the week before, and he didn't actually get to What If when I thought he was going to do it. And I got to tell you, I
still haven't seen Aquaman.
Oh well, that one.
I know.
I want to gauge your palette now. Have you seen? But you've seen the -1, right? You've seen the Godzilla -1.
No, I haven't been to the theater.
Okay, watch Aquaman first, and then -1 is the palette cleanser. In case I'll tell you what, I had so much fun at Aquaman 2 because I took my nephew, and we just the movie reprints the same money that they cashed in on Aquaman 1.
My stepson's not even interested.
It's bonkers city.
Yeah, if he'd been interested, we would have gone weeks ago.
Patrick Wilson's great. Dolph Lundgren's great.
Okay,
it's fun. Black Manta's great. It's a fun, but Ian, you have to run to this Godzilla -1.
Yeah, I need to see it.
Ian,
it's hard.
The Godzilla -1. I'd be watching more of these Oscar hopefuls if it was like Killers of the Flower Moon -1. Wouldn't that be great?
Sure.
Because Godzilla's not. I mean, he's not entirely in this movie that much. The -1, but it's a beautiful, wonderful movie, and then Godzilla's actually in it. If they do Killers of the Flower Moon -1, or maybe Saltburn -1, what do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Saltburn -1 with the digital stuff that they do now with the computers and
I like it.
The digital stuff. They could add Godzilla to, if it's not doing too well right now. The Maestro -1.
Sure.
What do you think of that, Bradley Cooper? Maestro -1, like you're the maestro, and then you hear, and then
people are going to complain. Some people are going to be like, "Oh, the prosthetic on Godzilla is not realistic enough." Oh, I can still tell it's Godzilla.
I'm telling you, it would get my butt in the seats a lot faster. Well, Ian, it sounds like you're busy. If you're not watching the -1, it sounds like you're super busy. So I'll let you get back to it. If we have less Marvel releases, it does not mean we're going to see less Ian here. Hopefully,
I was going to say, by the way, I agree about what do you call it, Monarch, and I would be offended that you're not having me on that Geekscape, but I guess Chris Black is a better person to have on to discuss Monarch.
And I'll tell you what, I saw the trailer for the Kong Godzilla sequel.
Yeah,
where they fight Cranky Kong from Donkey Kong Country. I mean, they have there's an evil Kong.
I haven't seen the trailer.
Oh, the trailer. The big threat of the trailer is there's a bigger, meaner Kong.
Really?
Yeah. And so, I think our Kong is injured. They got to give him a power glove. He gets this power glove. He has this badass glove, and it's getting really a little Mortal Kombat-y, a little. I mean, because King Kong vs. Godzilla is a little silly, a little fun, really popcorny. Monarch is not that. Monarch is a little
elevates the whole series,
and that is what I was gonna say. Is that Monarch
and
really
the character
sold
stuff? Dude, I bawled in that last episode.
Monarch sold.
I cried twice in that last episode.
As far as I'm concerned, Monarch sold me some tickets to that next King Kong Godzilla. And if we can get any crossover there, who knows? I know Chris Black can't tell us, but I just want to talk Monarch. I mean, and you met Chris this summer at Comic Con.
No, I actually met Chris years ago for work.
And with the Outcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we met him here on the show. And Geekscape, that's all back in the Geekscape feed. So all of our episodes are free. Go back and share and explore and see, we had this creator on. I sometimes forget who we've had on the show, but we keep bringing them to you every week. People like Ian, or people from the writing or video games or comics. I think I have comics coming up next week. Who knows? But I keep bringing you the pop culture stuff every week. So share it with your friends. Tell people about Geekscape. And then join us on the socials. Search for Geekscape on Instagram and Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, whatever you got. And talk to us. I'm Jonathan at Geekscape.net. You can find Ian on our Geekscape Forever group. He chimes in every now and then. He loves it. And leave us those 5-star reviews. That helps our visibility too. I asked for a star from one of our favorite 80s movies. And they turned Geekscape down, and all I could think is the Geekscapers are not leaving enough reviews because we got turned down. We get a lot of stars, we get some pretty awesome people, but this star was a good one. This was one where I was like, oh, that. I told the publicist to set me up with a boxing match with the star.
Oh,
I said if he's not going to do the show, then I want to fight him.
But boxing, why not wrestle?
If I told you who it was, you would understand that boxing was the appropriate way to go.
Okay, that's kind of who it is.
All right, Geekscape. Well, I'm always working for y'all. So subscribe, share with your friends, leave the reviews, and keep pushing Geekscape forward and watching all of our other stuff. And we'll see you guys next week. All right. Thanks, Ian, for joining me.
Sure.
All right.